The courtroom was completely silent. Every breath, every movement felt heavy with tension. Then, the doors creaked open. A tiny 5-year-old girl, Lily Thompson, walked in, holding the leash of a large German shepherd, Max. Her small fingers clutched it tightly, as if the dog was her only protection. All eyes followed her as she made her way to the witness stand. But the moment she locked eyes with the man sitting at the defense table, everything changed. The dog's body stiffened. His ears shot up. His muscles tensed. Then, he growled. Low, deep, dangerous. A sound that sent a chill through the entire courtroom. Because in that instant, everyone knew. He recognized the man. And that could change everything. The courtroom was filled with hushed whispers, an undercurrent of unease hanging in the air. The judge's bench stood tall, polished oak gleaming under the fluorescent lights. A row of jurors sat stiffly, their gazes locked onto the entrance. Even the reporters, their pens poised over notepads, seemed to be holding their breath. Then, the doors opened. A tiny girl entered, clutching a thick leather leash in her small hands. Lily Thompson, just 5 years old, walked forward with slow, careful steps. The German shepherd at her side matched her pace, his body moving in perfect sync with hers. His fur was sleek, his eyes sharp, scanning the room like a silent guardian. For most children, walking into a room full of strangers would be overwhelming. But this wasn't just any room. This was a courtroom. And seated at the defense table was the man she feared most, Daniel Reeves. His suit was immaculate, his hair neatly combed. He sat with a relaxed confidence, his fingers interlocked as he watched Lily approach. There was no panic in his eyes, no worry, only amusement. To him, she was nothing more than a scared little girl, a child who hadn't spoken since the attack, a child who wouldn't be able to say a single word against him. He barely glanced at the dog by her side, but he should have. Lily climbed onto the oversized wooden chair, her tiny frame swallowed by the towering witness stand. She didn't fidget. She didn't cry. She simply sat, her back straight, her fingers tightening around the leash. The German shepherd, Max, sat at her feet, his posture eerily still. The only movement was the slow rise and fall of his chest. Judge Henry Collins studied them both from the bench, his expression unreadable. "Lily," the judge said gently, "do you understand why you're here?" She didn't nod. She didn't blink. Instead, she lifted her fingers. Just slightly. It was the smallest movement, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. But Max noticed, and his entire body changed. His ears shot up, his muscles coiled, his back straightened. His golden brown eyes locked onto Daniel Reeves. The deep growl that followed was not the sound of an obedient dog. It was the sound of a hunter recognizing its prey. The tension in the room snapped. Jurors shifted in their seats. A murmur rippled through the gallery. For the first time, Reeves's confidence cracked. His fingers, once loose and casual, curled into a fist against the table. A chill ran down Judge Collins' spine. Something had just happened. Something no one could ignore. The gavel came down. "This court will take a 15-minute recess," the judge announced abruptly. Lily still hadn't said a word, but it no longer mattered, because her dog had spoken for her. Lily Thompson's world had been small and perfect. At 5 years old, her days were filled with butterfly chases, bedtime stories, and laughter that echoed through the walls of her home. She loved coloring outside the lines, twirling in the sun until she got dizzy, and sneaking extra cookies when her mother wasn't looking. Her parents, Sarah and David Thompson, had worked hard to create a safe, happy life for her. Their quiet suburban neighborhood was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and neighbors waved from their porches. For Lily, danger had only existed in fairy tales, until that afternoon. It was a warm spring day, the kind that smelled like blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. Sarah was inside, talking to her sister on the phone, while Lily played just outside in their fenced backyard. The gate had been closed. It should have been safe. She was drawing on the pavement with chalk when she heard the soft rumble of an engine. A black van had stopped near the curb. At first, Lily didn't pay much attention. Cars came and went all the time. Then the door slid open. A man stepped out. He had a warm smile, a friendly voice, and a calmness in his posture that didn't set off any alarms. He crouched down, meeting her at eye level, his voice smooth and sweet. "Hey there, sweetheart. You like puppies?" Lily blinked at him, gripping her chalk tighter. She loved puppies. "I have some in my van," the man continued, motioning toward the open door. "They need someone special to take care of them. Someone like you." Something about his voice made Lily hesitate. She didn't move forward, but she didn't run either. Her little fingers tightened around the blue chalk, her breath suddenly harder to catch. A part of her knew something was wrong, but her body wouldn't move. The man smiled again, this time wider. He reached out. "Come on, sweetheart. Just a quick look." His hand clamped onto her wrist. Lily's entire body locked up. She wanted to scream, needed to scream, but no sound came out. Everything around her blurred. The backyard, the fence, the sidewalk. Her body refused to work. Then, a voice cut through the air. "Hey! Get away from her!" The man's head snapped up. Across the street, an elderly woman stood on her porch, gripping a phone. Martha Jenkins. Her wrinkled face was twisted in fury, her frail hands shaking, but her voice was strong. The moment the man hesitated, Lily yanked her wrist free. She turned and bolted toward the house. Her little feet barely touched the ground as she raced for the back door. Inside, Sarah was still on the phone, laughing at something her sister had said. She had no idea her daughter had just escaped something monstrous. Then Lily crashed into her. She buried her face in her mother's stomach, gripping her shirt so tightly her knuckles turned white. Sarah barely had time to react before she heard the sound of screeching tires. By the time she looked outside, the black van was gone. The police came. Detectives asked questions, but Lily didn't speak. Not that day. Not the next. Not even after the nightmares started. She stopped talking completely. Sarah took her to doctors. Selective mutism, they said. A trauma response. Therapists tried to help. They showed her pictures, asked her to point, to draw, to nod. Lily did nothing. She wouldn't step outside, wouldn't sleep alone, wouldn't look at strangers. The world had become a place full of shadows, and Sarah didn't know how to bring her daughter back until she met Max. Max had once been unstoppable. A highly trained K-9, he had spent years on the police force, tracking criminals, searching for missing people, saving lives. But 3 years ago, during a raid, he got injured. He had lunged at an armed suspect, taking the hit that was meant for an officer. A deep knife wound tore into his side. He survived, but he wasn't the same. His speed wasn't as sharp, his agility wasn't as quick, and in a system that needed perfection, he was retired, discarded, labeled unfit for service. The department put him on a euthanasia list, until Dr. Laura Bennett, an animal rehabilitation specialist, stepped in. "He still has purpose," she had said. "He just needs someone who understands." But Max didn't trust people the way he once had, until he met Lily. Sarah was skeptical when she brought Lily to the therapy center. Max was big, powerful, and scarred. Lily was small, fragile, and afraid. But when Lily first saw Max, something shifted. For the first time in weeks, she didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But she took one step closer. Dr. Bennett had knelt beside her, speaking softly. "You don't have to touch him if you don't want to. He'll wait right here." Lily hesitated. Then, slowly, hesitantly, she reached out. Her tiny fingers brushed against Max's fur. The dog didn't move, didn't startle, just let her. And then, for the first time since the attack, Lily exhaled. After that, everything changed. Lily wouldn't leave without Max. She still didn't talk. But at night, when the nightmares came, she clutched his fur instead of screaming. She still wouldn't go outside. But as long as Max was beside her, she'd sit near the window. Little by little, he became her strength, her shield, her voice. And that's why, when she walked into the courtroom, holding his leash, he understood her silence better than anyone else. Because he had been broken once too, and he had fought his way back, just like she was about to. The day after Lily's silent testimony, FBI agent Jack Monroe sat in a dimly lit office, staring at the case files sprawled across his desk. He had worked child abduction cases for over 2 decades, seen monsters hide behind friendly smiles. But something about this case felt different, as if they were on the edge of something bigger. Across from him, Prosecutor Olivia Carter leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You saw what happened in that courtroom," she said. "That dog reacted like it knew Reeves." Monroe exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Dogs don't lie." "Which means Lily has seen something she can't verbalize," Olivia continued. "And we need to find out what." Monroe tapped the case file. "We're missing something. He's too confident. No panic, no mistakes. A man like that doesn't take just one victim." There was a pause. Then Olivia slid a folder toward him. "I pulled records from surrounding counties." Monroe flipped it open and froze. 4 missing children, all taken in the last 18 months. All from safe neighborhoods. all lured in broad daylight, just like Lily. Monroe's jaw clenched. This isn't his first time. And now, they had a pattern. The biggest break came from forensic analysis. The black van that Lily's neighbor Martha Jenkins had seen? It had been blurry in security footage, but she had remembered the first 3 letters of the plate. YKZ. It was a long shot, but Monroe's team ran it through the system anyway. Within hours, they had a hit. The van had been registered to a rental company, one that had reported it stolen 6 months ago. Olivia tapped the report. And guess who used to work for that rental company? Monroe didn't even have to guess. Daniel Reeves. The deeper they dug, the worse it got. Reeves had spent years carefully erasing his tracks. No past criminal record, no online footprint, nothing to raise suspicion. But one piece of evidence finally cracked the case wide open. Forensic analysts had gone through soil samples found on the stolen van's tires. The results pointed to a very specific location, deep in the woods, miles from the nearest road. A cabin. Monroe wasted no time. He and his team drove out immediately. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun was dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the clearing. The place looked abandoned. Windows boarded up, weeds creeping up the wooden walls. But as Monroe stepped closer, something felt wrong. Max, who had been brought along for the search, stiffened. His ears shot up, nose twitching wildly. Then he let out a low, warning growl. Monroe's instincts kicked in. Guns up, we go in quiet. His team moved fast. The door was locked, but a single kick sent it flying open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. And then, they saw it. A trapdoor. Monroe's pulse pounded as he knelt, running a hand over the wooden boards. Scratch marks. Someone had tried to claw their way out. He yanked it open. A steep staircase disappeared into darkness. Flashlights! He barked. As soon as the beam cut through the shadows, his stomach twisted. Scattered across the basement floor were children's belongings. A pink sneaker, a tiny stuffed bear, a school backpack, faded and torn. And in the farthest corner, a girl, chained, barely moving. Her clothes were ragged, her face pale, but as the light hit her, she stirred. Monroe rushed forward, unlocking the chains. The girl's lips trembled. Her voice was barely a whisper. Help me. Monroe swallowed hard, lifting her gently into his arms. You're safe now. The team moved fast, wrapping a blanket around her, calling in medical support. What's your name, sweetheart? Olivia asked softly. The girl's lips parted. Emma, she whispered. Emma Sullivan. She had been missing for 6 months. And now, she was alive. The next morning, news of Emma Sullivan's rescue hit every headline. The courtroom was packed. Cameras lined the back walls. For the first time since his arrest, Daniel Reeves looked different. His usual confidence was cracking. He sat stiffly, hands clenched, avoiding everyone's gaze. Olivia stood, holding up the new evidence report. Your Honor, we have substantial forensic proof linking Daniel Reeves to the cabin where Emma Sullivan was found. She turned to the jury. For 6 months, this little girl was held captive. The man who took her thought he would never be caught. She let that sink in. But he made one mistake. She gestured toward Max, sitting calmly beside Lily. He underestimated what a child remembers. Reeves shifted uncomfortably. His lawyer, Michael Graves, was already flipping through the new reports, whispering furiously. Judge Collins studied Olivia. And what evidence directly links the defendant? Olivia didn't hesitate. His DNA was found in the basement, on the chains used to restrain Emma Sullivan. Tire tracks outside the cabin matched the stolen van registered in his name. She walked closer to the jury. Emma is alive. That means we have a survivor who can testify. For the first time, Reeves's composure broke. His jaw tightened. His foot tapped anxiously against the floor. The jury saw it. They saw his nerves, his fear, and they weren't alone. Max had been lying at Lily's feet the whole time. Quiet, still, watching. But now, his head lifted. His golden brown eyes locked onto Reeves. And then, he growled. A slow, deep, threatening growl. Reeves flinched. That was all it took. The shift in power was clear. For the first time, Reeves wasn't in control anymore. Because they had him. And he knew it. The tension in the courtroom was nearly tangible as the proceedings moved into their most critical phase. After days of mounting evidence and nervous whispers among the spectators, it was finally time for Lily Thompson to take the stand. The air was thick with anticipation. Every head turned as the bailiff announced her name. Lily, still small and quiet as ever, walked up the steps toward the witness box with her mother, Sarah, by her side. Her hand remained wrapped tightly around the leash of Max, the loyal German shepherd who had become her protector through all the dark moments. Despite her silence, her eyes spoke volumes, conveying both fear and a quiet determination. As she settled into the witness chair, the courtroom fell into a hushed silence. The defense, led by Michael Graves, exchanged wary glances. Graves was known for his aggressive tactics, and today he intended to use every trick in the book to discredit Lily's testimony. He rose slowly, buttoning his suit with an air of practiced confidence, and walked directly toward the witness stand. "Miss Thompson," Graves began in a measured tone, "you have been through a very traumatic experience. Would you please tell this court exactly what happened that day?" His voice was smooth but carried an undercurrent of condescension, as if he doubted the reliability of her memory. Lily's eyes dropped momentarily, and though she did not speak a single word, her face remained calm. Instead, her hand, small and delicate, moved in a familiar, subtle gesture. It was the same signal she had used during therapy sessions to indicate that she understood, and that she was trying to communicate in the only way she could. This silent cue, nearly imperceptible to many, was a powerful reminder of the trauma that had silenced her. Graves frowned, as if expecting her to speak up. "Are you saying you're unable to recall the details? Or are you choosing not to speak?" he pressed, trying to force an answer out of the little girl. Before anyone could interject, Max stirred. The large dog, who had been seated quietly by Lily's feet throughout the proceedings, suddenly shifted. His ears perked up, and his eyes locked onto Daniel Reeves, the defendant. In that moment, Max's reaction was unmistakable. His body tensed, and a deep, low growl emanated from his throat. The sound was not merely animalistic, it was a warning, a clear sign that he recognized something deeply wrong about Reeves. Judge Henry Collins, who had been watching the interaction intently, leaned forward. His voice broke the mounting silence. "Has this dog ever met the defendant before?" he inquired, his tone both curious and stern. The courtroom gasped collectively. All eyes shifted toward Reeves, who sat rigidly at the defense table. For a long minute, he avoided eye contact, his calm demeanor crumbling under the judge's probing question. In that pause, it was as if every hidden detail of his involvement was laid bare for the assembly to see. Reeves's hands began to tremble, and beads of sweat formed on his brow. His confident facade, which had been maintained so meticulously throughout the trial, was now visibly cracking. The prosecuting team exchanged satisfied glances. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Olivia Carter, the prosecutor, rose and moved to the front. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she announced, her voice resonating in the silent room, "we have new evidence." She held up a sealed envelope marked "Forensic Report." This report confirms that DNA found on the chains used to restrain the rescued girl, Emma Sullivan, and even traces in the basement of the abandoned cabin, match that of Mr. Reeves. The sound of a murmur rippled through the courtroom. The gravity of the new evidence was not lost on anyone. The defendant's fate now seemed sealed. Reeves's eyes darted nervously, and he began fidgeting with his tie, the confident smirk replaced by a look of panic. Michael Graves attempted to salvage the situation. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge the presence of this evidence, it remains circumstantial," he started, but his words were drowned out by the rising tension. Judge Collins held up his hand for silence. "Mr. Reeves," he said, fixing him with a steely gaze, "the evidence we have today is both compelling and undeniable. You have been implicated in actions that have left irreparable scars on innocent lives." His words echoed through the courtroom, each syllable weighted with the promise of justice. At that moment, Max shifted again. The German shepherd's reaction grew even more intense, his eyes narrowed, his body poised as if ready to pounce. His growl deepened into a resonant, almost palpable sound that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. Every eye in the room was fixed on the dog, and the silence was broken only by the low rumble emanating from Max. Reeves, now clearly overwhelmed, began to sweat profusely. His earlier composure had given way to a raw, undeniable fear. It was as if the quiet intensity of the courtroom had drawn out every hidden insecurity he possessed. The transformation was almost immediate. The confident, smug man was now reduced to someone on the verge of a breakdown. The tension reached its peak when Reeves's voice finally cracked. I want to change my plea," he stammered, the words barely audible over the collective gasp of the courtroom. His confession, delivered in a trembling whisper, sent shockwaves through the room. The defense lawyer, Michael Graves, looked as if he had been struck. He struggled to regain control, but the momentum had clearly shifted. In that defining moment, every piece of evidence, every whispered recollection, and every look exchanged in the courtroom affirmed what everyone now knew. Reeves was responsible. His meticulously constructed defense had collapsed in an instant. Judge Collins's voice was firm as he declared, "Mr. Reeves, your statement today will be taken as a change of plea. This court will now proceed accordingly." The gavel came down with a resounding crack that seemed to seal Reeves's fate in that very instant. As murmurs filled the room and reporters hurried to scribble down every word, Olivia Carter stepped forward one last time. "Today, justice has been served," she stated, her tone resolute. "Not only has new evidence come to light, but the truth has been unmistakably revealed by both human testimony and the instincts of a loyal guardian." She paused, glancing at Max, who still stood protectively by Lily's side, his eyes never leaving Reeves. In that charged atmosphere, the courtroom bore witness to the collapse of a facade and the rise of undeniable truth. Reeves's fate was sealed not merely by forensic evidence, but by the silent, steadfast testimony of a small girl and her courageous dog. The scene was a powerful reminder that even in the absence of words, justice finds a way to speak, and that sometimes a loyal heart and a keen instinct are the most compelling witnesses of all. The gavel slammed down, echoing through the silent courtroom. "All charges against the defendant, Daniel Reeves, have been proven beyond reasonable doubt," Judge Henry Collins declared, his voice firm. "The court hereby sentences him to life in prison without the possibility of parole." A murmur rippled through the gallery, some in relief, some in disbelief. The press scrambled to document the moment, cameras clicking, pens scratching across notepads. But at the center of it all, one person wasn't watching Reeves anymore. Sarah Thompson, Lily's mother, let out a shaky breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned to her daughter. Lily had been through more than any child should ever endure, but she had survived. And now, the man who had tried to take her away, who had stolen the voices of other innocent children, was gone forever. Sarah wrapped her arms around Lily, holding her close, pressing a trembling kiss against her forehead. "It's over, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're safe." But Lily wasn't looking at her mother. She was looking at Max. The German shepherd, still sitting at her feet, had been watching everything, his keen eyes tracking every movement, his ears twitching at every sound. He had stood by her when she was too afraid to face the world. He had spoken for her when she couldn't find her voice. And now, for the first time in weeks, Lily finally found it. She knelt down beside him, her tiny hands reaching for his scarred face. Max didn't move. He just watched her with deep, patient eyes. Lily swallowed, her lips parting slightly. Then, in a voice soft but steady, she whispered, "Good boy." The entire courtroom froze. Sarah gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. The jurors, the lawyers, even Judge Collins sat motionless, stunned into silence. The little girl who had been too afraid to speak, who had been locked inside herself for weeks, had just broken through. Max's ears perked up. His tail gave a small, hopeful wag. And then, he licked her cheek. A giggle, light, warm, real, escaped Lily's lips. The sound was soft but powerful, a reminder that even after darkness, light could return. Sarah let out a quiet sob of joy, wrapping Lily in her arms once more. Around them, even the toughest officers blinked away emotion. At the defense table, Reeves sat motionless, no longer the powerful man he once was. But no one was looking at him anymore. Because in that moment, it was Lily and Max's victory. And Max? He wagged his tail, knowing his job was done.